Hello, I'm Natalie Gooden. Welcome to the Leaders in Logistics panel discussion, Supercharging Last Mile Delivery, Utilising Technologies for Increased Customer Benefit, hosted in association with Honeywell. Great to have you with us today. Now, Amazon delivered a staggering 3.5 billion parcels in 2019, its highest volume to date. It doesn't stop there. The meteoric rise of e-commerce and online sales has driven the last mile delivery market to evolve and expand far faster than many predicted and many other industries. For customers, speedy fulfillment and convenient delivery isn't just nice to have, it's absolutely essential. So businesses need to adapt really quickly to meet new customer demands, to listen, to respond, and if they're slow to react, they could be at risk from those that do. That's why we're here today. Get ready to immerse yourself in new innovative delivery models, the impact of AI and automation on delivery times, and lots of new products and ideas that are hitting the market. Before we do that, let's meet our fantastic panel who are joining us here today in London. Natalie Frow. Hello, Natalie.
Hi, Lindsay.
Great to have you with us. Natalie joined DHL as Vice President for Home Delivery in January 2019, and she's responsible for the operation of large item home delivery and in-home services for a wide range of leading retailers. Natalie brings a wealth of experience from Royal Mail, where she has led large and complex operational networks and many other things too. Good to have you with us today. Next up, we have Richard Blown. Hello, Richard.
Good afternoon.
Great to have you with us too. Richard is a digital architect with over 20 years of IT experience. Now, he's passionate about new and disruptive technologies and how to harness them to accelerate digital transformation strategy. Now, Richard leads the Hermes Innovation Lab and uses a lean startup approach to deliver new products to customers, building technical proof of concepts to pitch ideas and demos to the board. Great to have you with us too.
Thank you.
Last but not least, we have Guido Vangenechten. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good to have you with us. Guido has more than 15 years of experience in the industry, being engaged with major logistics companies all over Europe, including DHL, bpost, PostNord, DPD, GIs, and many more besides. Great to have you with us too. Thanks for joining us today. Now, over the next hour or so, we'll be covering lots of ground, and you may well have a few burning questions or comments for us, so we want to give you the opportunity to put them to our panel today. Send them in throughout the discussion while you're watching us live, either by using the Twitter hashtag, which today is LastMile20. That's LastMile20. Get in touch. Or via the comment section below us here. We'll get to as many as we can towards the end of our discussion in the next hour. But let's start off by unpacking the ways in which customers are currently demanding parcel deliveries and ask ourselves honestly, really honestly, how can we start to improve through a more connected approach? Well, Natalie, first, kick us off. Where is the industry falling behind in terms of last mile delivery, do you think, at the moment?
We recently published a white paper on e-commerce, and in there it suggests that about 40% of supply chain costs, end-to-end supply chain costs, sits in the final mile. So for me, it's about how do we drive more efficiency in that part of the supply chain, but how do we do it and also deliver great customer service? I think that's the challenge for us. Such
a challenging industry to be in. There are other issues. What do you think in terms of other issues that might be affecting last mile delivery, Richard?
So I'd probably like to bring up the sustainability angle.
Yeah.
So very conscious of the number of vehicles that will be entering your neighbourhood from different carriers. And is there anything we could do to kind of consolidate that and tackle that head on?
It's a headline that we all will hear about as well. And there are so many issues. Speed of delivery, operational efficiency, those things are really important. We'll talk about the tech, about customer relationships today. But what do you think are the difficulties and that need to be sorted?
I think it's a bit harsh on the industry to talk about the issues only, given the fact that it's not that many years ago that we had the only way to purchase a product was to buy to a store. Yeah. And these days you're able to buy any product anywhere on the planet and have it delivered on your doorstep. So are there things where there's room for improvement? Of course, but...
it's interesting. We'll talk about customers in a second, but there have been great strides forward. If as a customer 2 years ago, in the UK where we are today, actually, I couldn't really track my parcel. I didn't really get a text. I didn't really get any information as to where it was. I had to just stay in. And if it didn't arrive that day, hard luck. That's the way it was. Things have moved on. There are great stories, Richard. There are great examples of how the industry has moved on. Not there yet, but they are making a lot of progress.
Yeah, and I think customers today they'll get a lot of communication, they'll get a lot of feedback about the delivery. and they've got busy lives, so they really want to have convenience. They really want to be able to take control of that delivery if their circumstances change.
Guido, what do you think in terms of what we customers want? I'll come to you, Natalie, in a second as well. But what do you think we really want? Is it just about convenience? I mean, clearly it's about much more than that.
No, it's not only the convenience. I think the basics right as well. The right package on the right time on the right spot is of course something the consumer wants.
Yeah.
I think it goes to the other side of white glove deliveries for expensive watches, for example, as well. But I think as well, customers are putting more pressure on flexibility as well, not only in the delivery options, but also along the way when the delivery is happening. They might switch from a home delivery to somewhere a parcel locker or whatever, depending on their schedule as well. But I think there's a lot more than just the basics they're asking these days.
Essentially, Natalie, we want, it's a phrase you may not be aware of, Guido, the moon on a stick. We want
do.
everything when we want it, how we want it, where we want it, which is here. I mean, it's difficult to keep up, surely.
Yeah, we do, and delivery companies have advanced massively in the last 10 years, even in just a short period of the last few years, in terms of being able to offer those services. The challenge for us as logistics providers is that the more choice and convenience and control that you give back to the consumer, the more complexity that drives throughout your supply chain, the more cost it delivers. Coming back to that environmental impact, the more vehicles you've got on the road, the more impact it has on the environment. So absolutely, consumers will continue to demand that. E-commerce will continue to grow. We have to find ways of addressing those challenges through the supply chain.
So, I mean, it's a very personal relationship with the customer, actually. I want my item. I'm really looking at the delivery company is not important to me. If I'm really brutal about it, not yet. So I want the parcel that I'm looking for right now. How do you start to meet customers' personal demands more? Because I get the impression from out here that there's a pinch point at the moment.
Yeah, so for me, I think that's twofold. I think there's an element of continuing to develop those services as customers shop more and more online, as their experience becomes more about that that delivery at the end through the delivery carrier. It's about developing those services, but I also think it's about managing the expectation of customers, and actually how do we guide customers to make choices that help us to provide a great and efficient service. So whether that's through working with retailers on variable pricing to try and influence those decisions when customers are making choices, so that they're decisions that are good for us. And we've seen that on the environmental agenda as well, with retailers offering green delivery slots. Whether that's through communication throughout that purchasing journey, that reminds you when it's going to be delivered, so that you're going to be in to receive it.
There are many, many issues at stake here, including the technology, which we will move on to. But while we're with customer relationships, Richard, does the industry have clarity on what customers really want right now? Is there real clarity? Is it possible to have clarity with the regulation in mind, with the lack of personal data perhaps that's available to companies and so on? Is there one thing that you need in terms of clarity to provide a better service?
It's a real challenge. We talked about the customer expectation, and in terms of delivery, a good delivery is it's being delivered, and everything else can be a challenge kind of from there downwards. So in terms of the tension between what a customer wants, what a retailer wants, I think we really should ask them. And the more opportunity we have within our communication with them, whether that's via text, SMS, or etc., actually ask them and let them give us the feedback, let them put them in control of the delivery.
There are so many things. We had a chat before we came on today, and there are so many interesting things to get to. We'll get to them in due course. But let's talk about that the retailer's relationship with delivery companies that Natalie's just hinted at. We'll touch on that for a minute. What do retailers demand now from me as a provider of deliveries?
I think accuracy is probably one of their top items. Accuracy as well. I think with the customer ownership being transferred to the logistics company for the deliver, they also transfer the last part of the shopping experience. While they were used to manage that shopping experience all the way in their brick and mortar stores as well, that gets transferred to the logistics company as well. And that's where, if that delivery is not happening as they would expect or the customer would expect, there's a business risk as well, or losing the customer loyalty even, or purchasing somewhere else in the future as well. So there's a huge interest for the retailer as well to have it accurate, predictable, and right.
There need to be good relationships, and there already must be, Natalie, in order to provide the service from retailer to customer and back if needed. There must be a good relationship already. Does it need to improve?
I think it's about us working closer and closer together. It's less about, the retailer's space and the delivery company's space. It's about how we manage that customer journey end to end. I think more and more the retailers are expecting us to be able to support them with our knowledge and expertise about how they can design that purchase experience right up front at the beginning of the journey that helps to make that a great experience all the way through, because we know that if customers have a great experience, the likelihood of a repeat purchase is much higher. So there's a revenue opportunity for retailers of us working together as well.
It's difficult when you're in the middle, so you're delivering the items, but perhaps you don't have the direct relationship with the customer, and that's maybe not even possible at the moment. What the customer has a relationship with the retailer. How do you start to become a relevant part of that equation? Not only to the retailer, so to generate a greater relationship, there is a revenue opportunity there, but also just some valuable part within the value chain, Richard.
So I think if I put myself in the shoes of a customer, I think the value will really come from the personalised experience, that personalisation where you really feel that the retailer and the carrier understand you and they understand your preferences, and the communication is clear in terms of signposting the perhaps dual branding of the players that are involved, but also remembering what you wanted last time, remembering where your safe place is, and suggesting that back to you just to show that they really understand you as a customer.
Personal touch.
Personal touch.
Which has been very hard to this point because of the pace of change, the pace of our demands on you has been extreme. So, we've all been there. The delivery driver says, here's your parcel, signature, bye, off you go. So that's actually very difficult to generate that interest. But is it possible, Guido? Can we start to become a relevant and really useful and friendly part of that journey of my item from there to here?
It's a thin line. I think as long as 95% of consumers choose free delivery, or it's one of the biggest motivations to purchase a product or to choose a retailer, there's going to be time pressure on the deliveries as well. So I think it's going to require a mentality change as well of some of the consumers, or some sense of reality as well.
So,
but I think companies like DHL and Hermes are doing the best to get quality deliveries as well because it's their business at risk as well. So there's a lot of interest for them in there as well. But I think it's a thin line we're on as well.
Are there any models, examples around the world that have offers, say, a blue chip service that then comes with a little price tag? Is there any subscription model that's available? I
think so. I think the companies are exploring these kind of new business models as well. And I think especially on high value goods, consumers might be willing to pay to get a more personalized delivery as well. But I think we're not there yet as well, especially on the low value goods as well. People are not always willing to pay for that premium service for delivery as well.
Yeah. Richard, what about relevance? What about making sure that the customers understand what's relevant to them? That could be in the mode of delivery, it could be in the service they get. Because communication is clearly a very important part of this.
So there's two key points I'd like to mention there. The first would be in terms of the channels that you use to communicate to your customers. So there's a proliferation of web, mobile, even voice these days, and understanding their preferences again. So, do they prefer text, SMS, push notifications? So first is communication channels, and then the second is the timeliness and the relevancy of the information. So if you're not going to be in, and we give an estimated time of arrival, and you're not going to be in, then at that point we can say, well, would you like to leave it with a neighbour in a safe place, or perhaps future technology options such as lockers, in-home and in-car delivery?
It seemed impossible, but is it possible to have some kind of tracking GPS data so that you can rove, and you can actually, if I'm out there at one of my 5 top places to be that day, that on the way to your house you can swing by there? Is there latitude? Because latitude is very difficult to build in for any driver. Is there a possibility of these more convenient approaches? Natalie, what do you think?
I think the technology will get us there. I think we come back to how do we make that stack up from a cost perspective and from an efficiency perspective, particularly as Guido pointed out earlier, the expectation for the customer is that these things come for free. Yeah. The more complexity you allow that customer to drive in, the more inefficiency, your asset utilization reduces, that drives cost into your supply chain. So, for me, there's an element of how we get the technology, the communication piece is really important. We use some artificial intelligence engines to do a pre-delivery survey with lots of our customers in order to try and manage that expectation. So, using clever linguistics to make the customer feel like they're in control, but you're kind of subtly moving them to behaving in a way that suits your operating model. So hopefully what you get is a win-win. But what we find is that where we get customers to successfully engage in that conversation, the success of delivery is significantly improved. Going back to that cost element, reducing failure in final mile has got a huge impact for everyone involved.
A perfect time. We'll move on to this right now, but I guess that's the thing, isn't it? There is a point here, which is if the pinch is on the delivery time, wherever you deliver, if the pinch is on that, it's before and after that perhaps the relationship, where the relationship perhaps lies, a continuing relationship, because they probably will come back to you, even if they currently don't know it, for that same service or even better. So it's there before and after. Okay, with all that in mind, it's 15 minutes in. What can businesses today face unrelenting pressures, don't they, to reduce operating costs? We've hinted at it here. They need to better manage their workforce. They need to deliver perfect customer service, or as near as damn it. So delivery firms need end-to-end operational improvements where seconds really do matter to make operations more efficient. So Guido, let's talk AI for a second. Where is AI currently being used to good effect to start to make last mile delivery more efficient or more effective or more timely? Where is it starting to work?
Yeah, in an industry where every second counts, we have been developing some new scanning solutions as well, which helps drivers but also warehouse workers as well to improve the scanning. Give you a couple of simple examples as well. It's kind of a driver using his scan device as well to find the right package that he needs to find in his truck for the delivery he needs to do right now as well. But also in the warehouse, it might help scan in one scan multiple barcodes and pick the right barcode out of there. So we're looking into where can we help the industry with winning some time and winning some seconds and getting the efficiency and the cost efficiency up and the costs down as well.
Yeah. So AI is generally a forward-looking predictive thing. Robotic process automation is about the automation, the process involved. There's a bit of both, isn't there, really, Richard? You need to get your systems in place and the information connected up. Is there anything in terms of predictive AI that you think is interesting at the moment?
So I think looking at the bigger picture, looking at the big data, I'd like to look at historical information to make forward predictions. So one of the things we've been looking at and trying to combat is the issue of fraudulent deliveries. So what we're trying to look at is by using the historical deliveries that we know have been successful to your address, where we have an accurate GPS location and we know that there haven't been any claims, for example, if we could take the last 5 successful deliveries and say this is now what we would term a golden address. Yeah. And then if we spot addresses where we suspect there has been fraudulent activity or there have been a high number of claims, then we can actually use that historical information to play back to a retailer and actually suggest them, well, perhaps on this occasion you might want to ask for a signature, or you might want to ensure that the parcel is actually delivered to a customer or to a neighbour.
I suppose, like financial fraud, you can also, if you have those tools in place, those systems in place, you can actually start to predict if it's more organised, for example, or if there are new patterns emerging. Those things, those like cyber fraud, cyber risk, can be better predicted with those tools in place already. So it's probably important that people look at those, isn't it?
Yes.
Right now, anyway. Yeah.
You'll start to see patterns and you'll start to see early warning indicators, and then you can start to react differently.
That would certainly save a lot of money as well. We talked about failure of the risk of failure, Natalie. With technology in mind, how can that start to reduce those risks? I know I threw in GPS earlier on, but that's not really what we're talking about now. In terms of AI, can it start, or robotic process automation, can it start to join up information better or help others to predict what might be next? How can that start to play a part?
I mean, I think in terms of reducing failure, it comes back to what Richard said earlier about, how do we remember individuals' preferences and requests? How do we get that technology to collect information from customers? If it's a safe place, can you help us find that safe place? The survey tool, which allows you to engage in that conversation with customers. It's about using those tools to collect that data, but then also provide it back to the driver. So en route, helping the driver to resolve those issues by providing them with up-to-date information. And then when things don't go as planned, how does it help you reroute, retime, contact the customer, make those changes on the go?
What about things like customer communication? I'll go down the chatbot route. Is there a way of, in non-urgent situations or non-complex situations, that these technologies can start to play a part? Maybe in communication. Are there things there that can be effectively used? Because quite honestly, we are very picky as customers, and we may not want that to be an interaction that governs our life. But we may also equally want simple, very quick interactions. What do you think? Are there parts to play there, Richard?
Certainly. So we put a chatbot in place, I think about a year ago, the previous Christmas, the previous peak as we call it, and we saw a real successful adoption by customers. I think the key is people know that it's a chatbot and you're not trying to pretend that it's a human, and they understand that. Yeah. But where they want to make quick requests such as tracking, get that information back quickly, then I think the feedback has been really successful, and we've seen quite high adoption. And then we try and add more and more features and functionality into that chatbot, such as can I divert the parcel to a safe place or a neighbour, or even triggering other parts of the journey, such as returns.
The key here is for that interaction to feed you good information so that you can, bring a piece of technology that works in the market. So again, you need that relationship with your customers in order to generate that feedback. If you can't listen to the customers, you can't develop these ideas and technologies. Any other technologies, Guido, that you think that you see disrupting the market? Any other handy, nifty ideas?
I think the entrance of Android in this market has been a huge impact for everybody in this market, even for us as a technology provider as well. We have to rethink on how we develop products as well, how we manage life cycles, how we can stretch life cycles for products as well. But it has been a huge impact for companies like Hermes and DHL as well on their software, on their hardware systems as well. So it has been a huge disruptor for this market as well. So in a very short notice, with Windows going end of life, a bit unpredicted, we all had to rush into this new technology, and it has been a learning curve, but I think we're all getting there right now.
Ultimately, and we are all customers, behaviour is at the heart. If you can start to predict behaviour or start to monitor at least and then work around that, then that's gold. That's starting to reduce failure and starting to produce a service that we really want, isn't it? I mean, I guess that's what you have to focus on in principle is as every other industry is doing, look at what the customer really, really wants and how I behave.
Yeah, and I think you touched on the point earlier, which is really important in that space. It's about how you collect that feedback from the end customer, and how you collect it quickly and respond to it. So on many of our delivery services, we use a driver NPS feedback measure. So as soon as a delivery's happened, we're sending a survey link through various different formats, different communications channels to garner that feedback from customers. And because of the advances in technology, we can turn that around within 24 hours. So you go and do a delivery today, we're already collecting that feedback, and by the time you turn up tomorrow to go and do your delivery, we've been able to feed that back to you. Yeah. And what that allows us to do is empower our frontline people to continually develop those services that we offer to customers.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We'll stay with this for a minute because when we talk about automation and AI, as we are doing right now in this section, actually, we can fall down the rabbit hole and think about just the technologies, but actually the way we interact with the technologies and what we get from them, the enabling side of it is so important. Richard, that sounds like a good idea. I mean, that's what you're doing is twofold. You're getting that information across. Hopefully improvements will come part of that. But also, culturally, drivers can probably feel separated from the rest of the company sometimes. They're out on the road, tough job, don't get much interaction with customers either, a bit lonely. So actually that feedback, value, right?
Of course. So, and again, you want to encourage them, but anything we can do to make their lives and the role easier. So one of the things we're looking at, we touched upon it earlier, Natalie, was by allowing the customer to give the driver perhaps some more specific information about how to find a hard to find address. Do you live down a country lane, or is there a particular turning point or a car park that you need to access a flat or a building? Can we find ways that customers can, instead of limiting them with safe place drop down of a few items, could they actually take a photo of that safe place and provide instructions to guide their courier to it? And can they get feedback? So can we make it two-way in a sense that the courier could almost ask them, well, I can't find your address. Could you fill out this information? Maybe it'll help me next time.
How the people out on the road, is it important, or how important is it to listen to those guys as well? Because this conversation it starts from both ends, customer to company, people on the ground floor, up to the board. That whole thing has to be connected. So, using these technologies to have information from your team as well must be so important.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's the corporate image which gets on the doorstep of the consumer as well. So not only do you want them to be professional, but they're also a very valuable tool to collect that interesting information which help you optimize the processes and drive up the quality and drive up the customer satisfaction as well. So I think, they're a huge instrument to be successful in your operations as well.
You mentioned the sustainability issue as well. This is interesting. Before we came on, Natalie, you mentioned that your drivers are actually almost competitive to achieve the best, to beat the rest, and so on. That's all part of it. But the sustainability side is really important as well. If you can minimise the journeys, the more clued up, the more information you have before you take that journey, the better off you are. You can start to adapt and limit the amount of wasted time and mileage as well. These are really important.
Yes, I think we've touched upon it, but it's all about, can we deliver first time and can we deliver successfully? And for certain customers, we know and they know they're not going to be in. So can you offer a range? Can you offer a choice of options? We've talked about kind of neighbour and safe place, but what are the new ones? We've touched upon it earlier, but can you use technology like the boot of your car, or actually physically delivering into the home? There's a fascinating examples that we're kind of on the cusp on, and we're trying to really test and learn in that area. But also other ways that we could collaborate, other ways that carriers and retailers can work together, such that perhaps it's not important to have that delivery fast. Could you hold a few back and consolidate them and deliver at a time when it is convenient and you know that you'll be in?
Yeah. Final missing part that we haven't really touched on in that relationship is your suppliers, your partners. Not just retailers, not just customers, but the people you work with. How important is the use of technology and obviously the way we work with it, the communication piece between different parties working with the technology? How important is that with partners, people who will be with you on the journey, the people perhaps not just suppliers, people along the journey? You need to make sure they're also clued up and working in real time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also extends to where we're working with partners that provide some of those services. So, we're experts in that final mile piece. We then work with partners to provide some of those wraparound services, like surveys, tapping into technology experts, into linguistics experts, in order to develop those options that you can package up with that final mile delivery piece.
Innovation. Look, are there any ideas that are out there, just even concepts that are being talked about, perhaps, without giving too much of the game away, that you really like the sound of? That there are players who are just saying, well, we should try that. That's a really different way of doing things. Anyone like that you like the look of at the moment?
I think one interesting thing that we've been seeing, or I've been seeing, is this MatSim technology they're using as well. It's kind of technology where they're using data of SIM cards to look on behavior of people in certain towns. And if you just Google MatSim, and you will see a kind of a heat map of Berlin. That heat map will show when people leave in the morning, get back home in. And it helps operators and postal officers as well to design their network as well. So maybe in some of the locations, depending on the traffic and the heat maps you're seeing, you might not want a pick-up and drop-off point, but a parcel locker might be smarter, or the opening hours of your postal offices might be linked to the behavior of that community as well, and get more insights. And I think especially that kind of data will help operators to optimize their networks and optimize their costs as well.
Obviously, other heat maps are available, but perhaps. But that's an interesting idea. So it's just a bit of innovation. Any other thoughts? Is there a lateral thinking that's required to jump past the issues that there are right now?
I think so. I think one of the areas working in an innovation team myself, we're encouraged to do is kind of get out there and talk to other startups and other industries, and looking at the emerging technologies and the way that kind of freed from unshackled from corporate constraints, a startup can really try and disrupt a market. And if you look in other industries like fast food, taxis, et cetera, you can see how there's real lessons that we can learn there and apply that lateral thinking into the logistics arena.
Its application. I mean, an idea from that industry can be very relevant here, but hasn't been yet. Finally, before we move on, Natalie, can we expect us lot, the customers, to drive more in-home deliveries, or are we joining the age of the hub? So we go to our local high street and pick up things up. Obviously, suppliers here do that, but is there a shift, or will we have more in-home deliveries?
I think absolutely there'll be more in-home deliveries. We're seeing more and more proliferation of smart technology, just as a standard in people's homes, whether that's smart locks, smart doorbells. Yeah. For me, I think it will happen. It's less about volume, how much of it will there be? I think the key question for retailers and for us as logistics providers is what opportunity does that give us to add value at the point of delivery? So as more and more people shop online, their only interaction with that retailer is at the point of delivery. And how do we capture that as an opportunity to provide a human interaction or to layer in a value-added service, whether that's unpackaging, recycling takeaway, an installation, an upsell, smart home setup. And then coming back to that whole issue of cost, that's a great opportunity for us to layer in through pricing to try and recover some of that cost. In the way, going back to the comparisons with other industries, in the way the airlines have. Yeah. You start off with a £10 flight, by the time you've got to check out, it's £100 because you've chosen your seat and you've added a bag. How can we exploit that in-home experience in order to try and recoup some of that cost of delivery?
And from a customer point of view, the value has to be obvious, it has to be communicated. Yeah. To transport me to another country, I can see the value in that because I can see what I'm going to get at the end of the day. I'm going to be on a beach somewhere. To transport a toaster to me is less valuable, perhaps less sexy. Yeah. And so it's that there's still work to be done on that communications piece as to how good and how useful and how great we try to be for you as a customer. Yeah. So, I mean, we'll get back into that, I'm sure. But for now, let's move on. We're about 15 minutes away from your questions. So please do keep sending them in either through the webpage right here beneath us or on Twitter using the hashtag, which today, while you're watching this live, is LastMile20. But let's finish off by shifting our thoughts to the future. How will customers expect their deliveries to be made in the future, and can businesses do more to meet that demand, and how do you do that? Well, first of all, Guido, what should delivery firms be focusing on, do you think, right now with the rise of e-commerce, the fact that we are shopping online more?
I think it's key they keep their costs under control as well. Yeah. With the business exponentially growing as well at a faster pace than technology can be integrated in their operations to help them to support that growth as well. I think it's key to keep an eye on the cost as well. As my colleague already said that, there's a massive, it's up to 50% of the costs are linked to the last mile delivery as well. So supporting that growth and keeping your cost under control is going to be a big challenge as well. And we just hope that we can support them with the right technology to help them control those costs.
Is it important to think about different revenue models? So we haven't talked about this, but maybe, we know that certain restaurants have invested in other restaurants for healthy eating, and that brings in revenue and it gives them a place in the market. Are there other things, again, lateral thinking, investment in certain areas that you think are coming through as a good piece of business that could actually start to shift this? Because e-commerce is with us, but you cannot download your toaster. You might be able to 3D print it soon, but still, these things, again, that lateral thinking, Natalie, what do you think?
I think there's a few things around lateral thinking for final mile. I think there's a piece around collaboration, and certainly as a 3PL, we're doing a lot of thinking around collaboration in supply chains. You know, how do we tackle those efficiencies and provide the headroom to deliver those additional services by cost down elsewhere in the supply chain? And how do you do that by bringing retailers together to collaborate? Also picks up on that environmental impact. You know, we've got lots of vehicles running around half empty. How do we bring that together in order to address some of those issues? And I think 3PLs play a really important matchmaking role in that space, you know, the independent arbitrator of bringing together retailers that have got obvious synergies.
That relationship, Richard, so important.
Yes, and I think when it comes to thinking lateral, you can see retailers doing that a lot. And some retailers, there might be a trend to kind of move away from the high street, but some retailers are actually turning that to their advantage. If you've got a bricks and mortar location that has the product close to the end customer, then when we talk about the sustainability angle, is an opportunity to get that item from store to home without actually going all around the country and across the network. But secondly, in terms of lateral thinking and looking at other industries, is an opportunity to kind of crowdsource that model and look at things like delivery and people on bike and people on foot in densely urban areas. Is there an opportunity to kind of take some of the vehicles off of the road?
Yeah. It's important to look at the connectivity will hopefully connect you to your customers more. That's the ultimate goal, I guess, certainly in terms of speed and relevance. Is that all it's up to, speed and relevance? I mean, how connected do you really want to be to your customers?
Well, if you talk about kind of future connectivity, I'll probably bring in the topic of 5G here. So I'm really excited about that. I think we're a few years off it being kind of widely available. But in terms of kind of high speed, low latency, wide availability, then you're talking about pretty much everything being connected. So it's a real explosion of Internet of Things, millions of things connected. Could we actually be tracking the parcels themselves if the price point were correct? Certainly the vehicles that people are using throughout the network and items in smart cities such as like lampposts and lighting, etc. You're going to get real-time information back to the customer around traffic disruptions, weather disruptions, etc., etc. So I think it can only be a good thing. We're
talking about future trends, but actually, you know, the same old issues exist. The use case, so the business case for a new piece of technology, what will deliver to us, essentially revenue and sales, as opposed to operational efficiency. So there is still clearly that element involved, but I guess the argument has to be, what can we do that's better, more efficient for the customer, while not devaluing our service? You know, offering more value, I suppose, Guido. That's what it's all about.
And indeed, that's what it's all about as well. And I think the tools are there as well to get more insights in your infrastructure that you're using and to export that data as well and to make smart management decisions on optimizing your operations, doing things smarter, managing your infrastructure in the warehouse, but also the number of vans and drivers. So yes, I think it's important to have a look at that as well. And technology is right there right now to make it happen as well.
Natalie, what about that thorny issue of autonomous vehicles? You know, will we see a fleet of drones in the air next to us? Will we, you know, I hate to say, will we see lots of more juggernauts on the motorway? You know, a line of juggernauts delivering our packages. What do you think the future of that is?
I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
You know, and we've seen the trials, haven't we? We've seen Amazon trialling drones. You know, anybody who's walked around the streets of Milton Keynes has seen the little parcel delivery bots roaming around. You know, it is happening. We're out there trialling that type of technology. I think it will take some time because I think there's some challenges, you know, not least the infrastructure to make it work, so systems to make sure that they can operate safely, the regulatory changes that need to happen to make that work. But, you know, we probably a few years ago said the same about warehouses, and yet if you look at warehouses now, robotics, AGVs are commonplace, working alongside humans. They don't replace humans, they work alongside them to make tasks more efficient, to make them more accurate, and often to make them safer. So, you know, I think it will come. Not least because we also need to address the issue of labour shortage. You know, more and more deliveries needs more and more people. We've already got a very tight labour market, so finding ways of trying to bridge that gap through autonomous vehicles and robotics, I think is going to be a really key part for our strategy.
You raise a really important point, which we haven't talked about, which is the skills that people have, the skills that your team has in the future.
Yeah.
You know, does that need to really change?
Yes. Yeah. You know, that technological understanding, not just in terms of providing those services and taking advantage of those technologies, but, you know, looping it all the way back to what we said about added value services. You know, the more that technology develops, the more complex these items are that we deliver into people's houses. You know, your washing machine talks to your phone, talks to your Wi-Fi, your TV's connected. You know, actually helping people to get to grips with that technology at the point of delivery, particularly where they haven't had that human interaction at the point of purchase. So, you know, I think in terms of the skills of delivery people to be able to not just deliver, but to be able to maximise that technology when it gets into the hands of the consumer as well.
Well, this is where, I mean, I feel sorry for the industry in some ways because it's been such a challenge in the last few years. So many demands from us and so many strides forward, but the smallest things we pick out as a problem. So we will complain about those things, and and delivery, last mile delivery has had a unique challenge in that way. But of course, like every industry, now we're into every industry looking at the use of technology, new upskilling or sideways skilling, or whatever it might be. It's a challenge because inevitably with operational efficiencies, more automation, there are going to be fewer people without the relevant skills working for the organization. So how do you start to, I guess it's again looking at this industry in terms of service, doing what you do best, not just the logistical side, which is hard enough, it's the biggest part of the pie, but looking at how great your people are at dealing with customers. Is that where the relationship is when the technology is right?
Yes, I think if you look at technology kind of supplementing and augmenting what people can do, so instead of replacing them, it's actually freeing them up to do the more complex tasks, or in terms of customer inquiries, let the chatbot deal with the kind of straightforward routine tracking inquiries, and then the people, the human side of it can really kick in when it matters. Yeah. The same with you know, the autonomous vehicles. Yeah. It doesn't mean you necessarily need to take people off the streets. It could be that one person could go out with a swarm of these vehicles, and between them they achieve a lot more than they would have done on their own. So I think you'll see technology kind of augmenting what people can do and freeing them up for more value-added activities.
There's so much more I would like to have talked about security and about biometrics and getting into your house, maybe delivering that way. But let's talk about blockchain for a second, Guido. What role could systems or processes like blockchain have? What impact could it have on the industry?
I think it's probably going to have a big impact on the back end of the systems as well. If you just look on the way the systems communicate and the payments happens as well, I think blockchain probably will have the biggest impact over there as well. I think, but we don't have to wait until blockchain gets a mature technology and gets implemented in all our processes as well to optimize those processes as well. But I think especially on the back end, the impact will be over there.
What do I, if I'm not really involved and I haven't really got those processes, maybe I'm a small supplier actually, maybe I'm a small retailer, you know, what should I be looking at perhaps, or what can I as a supply company encourage my retailers to do to get ready for that, to be efficient, to be in a place where I need to be?
I think it's more a cultural thing as well. I think be open for it. Don't be afraid of new technology as well. I think what we're saying is that technology will even create jobs or make your jobs more interesting or support humans as well. So I think it's be open for that new technology and don't see it as a disruptor for your business as well.
Yeah. Final couple of questions. Returns, Richard. Massive issue. We talked about the sustainability issue. This is one of the big ones. How can the technology, we'll have to do it quickly, start to help with the issue of returns? So
I think, again, we touched on it earlier, but it's giving people a range of options and making it really simple for them. Traditionally, to get the item back into the system, you need a label. So we offer an opportunity where you could take that parcel down to a store with just using technology like a QR code on your mobile phone and allow a device in the store to be able to print that label, make that easier. We also want to talk about things like working with retailers to understand what's inside that parcel. So if you're returning something, you can say the specific order item you're returning. Therefore, it's benefit to the retailer, so they know the stock's coming back into the system, and it's beneficial to the end customer because perhaps you can issue them with an earlier refund as soon as the item enters the network.
Again, it's just having that preview, that the predictive ability as well. When you talked about golden address earlier on, those things are really important in order to get a full view, a better view of the people that you're serving. And final question, I'll throw it to Natalie. Where's the money coming from in the future? Where are the new exciting areas of business, if you can even answer that? Where could new revenue streams come from in the future?
For me, it's definitely about those added value in-home services. As the technology unlocks that for us, we, as a large item delivery, we're already entering people's houses anyway. That's what we do. We're already seeing rising demand for those added value. We see attachment rates to delivery purchases going up. So the demand is definitely there. Unlocking that capability more widely to provide those in-home services, I think, is a key one for retailers to be looking at.
Any thoughts, Richard? Again, innovation will throw out things that we can't possibly know right now, but we've talked a lot about lateral thinking. I forced it into our conversation today. It kind of is about that, isn't it? The new ideas, possible new revenue, new ways of working.
So I'm challenged with that all the time in the innovation team. What ideas can you come up with, not just for the sake of it, not just for technology's sake, but can you commercialise it? Can you come up with an opportunity? And a great one I'd just like to kind of shoehorn in now while I've got
Is it trademarked?
It will be. Something called Hermes Play, where actually we want to make parcels personal again and make a real connection with the person you're sending it to. So it might be your birthday or an anniversary. I can send you a parcel and I can attach now a video message, and you hold your phone over it and it actually brings that parcel to life. So it's a bit of magic, a bit of theatre using augmented reality. And we don't know, we're going to try it. We're launching soon, and I'm really excited because that's an idea that's come out of the innovation team, and let's just see what happens.
Love it. Can't wait to see my first message. Any other thoughts, Guido? Again, it's the innovation, the way to earn new revenue is going to be, about efficiency, but really on the positive side, it's that marketplace way of working. It's working with partners better.
Absolutely.
If you have that communication with your partners, they'll come up with ideas for you and they'll want to work with you and produce it.
As a technology provider, it's for us definitely key to understand the marketplace. Where are these new startups, software companies? What are they developing? What are they starting up? But also it's understanding our customers on where can we help them to improve their business as well? What technology is required? What should we develop? So we do some kind of joint sessions with customers as well, where we do some kind of technology day, exchange ideas as well on where are our roadmaps going to, what are your needs for, is there an overlap, or do we need to fine tune our plans and rethink a couple of things as well? So it's definitely, we're in the middle of the customer, the software, and trying to get that technology development up to speed with the requirements.
Well, at a time of transition like that, it's been a great discussion so far. We are not done yet. It's now time to hear from you, to throw the floor open to you. Thanks for sending in your questions. We've had lots and comments through Twitter and the webpage so far. You can still do that. We'll get onto them in just a second's time. Before we do that, let's please just mention our poll. So we have we'd like you to take a moment to rate today's discussion so far. Very simple. A poll question should be appearing on your feed right about now. Your response is completely confidential, but really useful to us. So please, if you can, fill that out. Okay, time for your questions. Firstly, to my screen here and to the screen here. First of all, Carlos Suarez, head of parcel delivery solutions and lockers at Correas. Hello. Are carrier agnostic parcel lockers the future? Now, Richard, we'll go to you. We talked a bit before we came on today about ways to deliver in more interesting ways, and you've spoken to somebody who has something like that.
Yeah, so I've recently met a great guy, an innovator, who's come up with a private locker box solution that you could have outside of the front door of your house, where any courier could make a delivery to it. And based on the fact you would have a mobile app, you can then authorise that delivery, or you get a notification that delivery is taking place. So I quite like that concept that's open. And can be used because for the customer, you don't just want to be tied to Hermes or DHL, whoever. You want open solutions, and I do think people need to partner.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Carlos, because we talked about this sort of issue and an idea before. Any thoughts, Guido?
I think that's definitely part of the future as well. I think it requires a change of mindset as well, not seeing each other as competitors all the time as well, but benefit from each other's infrastructure might be beneficial for the climate, the customer. So there's definitely an interest as the neutral parcel network as a value add to consumers, I would say. And I think in looking at the environment, I think it could help.
Well, if as Natalie said, the 40% failure on deliveries, well, I mean, that's the cost of it. That's such a big issue. Is something static at your place of home or work? The answer, could it ever be? This is a really unfair question. Could it ever be that I'm over there, and that delivery driver who has my parcel could swing by? Is that ever possible? Is there any, between the two of them, they're a world apart. A lockbox is one of those things that could solve it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and particularly for smaller items, I think that is a solution. I think in my space, in large items, it's difficult to get a sofa in a locker box, or a fridge freezer. But it's only a small step on to convert that technology to to maybe unlock the door to your house, or maybe there's an intermediate step that says we can get into your garage or we can get into your shed. You don't have to give us the access to the whole of your house. So I think it's a step on from there. But it's what customers want, and it goes back to that partnering. Across the whole supply chain, across retailing, we're having to think about partnering and collaboration. Again,
with something larger like a sofa, essentially I would like to be there anyway to receive it and have it put in the right place. So, horses for courses.
Yeah.
Okay, another question here to my screen. Tom Boex, thank you very much, Tom. I hope that's the correct pronunciation of your surname. Business Development Manager at Didac Injection NV. What role is returnable packaging playing in last mile delivery? We see some electronics distributors making a full switch to plastics from cardboard, for instance. Less damaged goods, faster handling time. Is this a trend that has a chance of catching on? Look, there's another question here around sustainability. We'll deal with that in a second. But first of all, packaging. I mean, it's such a big issue, and I don't know how you feel about that, Richard. What do you think about the issue of packaging and again sustainability?
It's tricky because I guess a lot of the emphasis is actually on the retailers who are packaging the items in the first place. Our couriers have a lot to do at the front door. I think it would be unreasonable to ask them to kind of collect packaging, or the vehicles are already quite full. But perhaps there's an opportunity where you could do something at our parcel shops, so our kind of local convenience stores, where we do take people returning items, or even indeed if they're sending something via Hermes, there's an opportunity there perhaps to use a sustainable packaging. Yeah,
it's a lot. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we work really closely with our retailers on that whole packaging thing, in terms of helping them to design plastic out. That's a big demand at the moment from retailers. It's how do we design plastic out? How do you still protect items, a mirror, piece of china, through that network while it hasn't got plastic around it? So lots of work that we're investing in terms of addressing that. In terms of the recycling bit, we do offer unpackaging services. It's a slightly different delivery experience with a large item, but we take that packaging away, and we run a whole Enviro Solutions operation within DHL that we push that back into, so that we're recycling it and trying to address that environmental piece. But
which I found very useful in the past, actually. It's a lovely surprise, and actually there's service, actually. Even though it has to be done, that is service. Guido, any thoughts? I mean, there is a issue here, I suppose, actually, in terms of technology, in terms of the monitoring of the packaging. Is there a way of perhaps, if plastic isn't quite there yet, of monitoring or evaluating how much of
I think it's a great idea, but I'm a bit with Richard's view as well. I think it's on the execution, on how do we execute on that, on reusable packaging and things like that as well. How do we make it operational as well? I'm not an expert in packaging as well, but I think the idea is great, and I think everybody is looking to get sustainability up as well, but I think the execution of it, I don't see the solution right now, but I think, as I'm not an expert, somebody else might see it. So
I heard an academic on the radio the other day talking about their new plastic, which is not really plastic at all. It's biodegradable, all those things that we've heard about. We know some packaging is that way, but it's not on a huge scale yet. But there are areas there, and again, working with the right partner, developing with that partner, then things start to be easier to justify in that way. But it is a tough issue right now. Another question, Jay Howard, thanks for writing in, Jay. BDA at Intralox. Your question, hello. Thanks to the panel for their time. Thank you to the panel for their time. I have a question on incentivising customers to take the less complicated or slower option. If next day delivery for free is the expectation, do you have to give credits? Could you give credits? So it's interesting, actually. That's kind of cashback, I guess, is it? Some kind of model where you get something back for for picking the right delivery slot. Again, it's a small innovation, but potentially good. I would imagine handling the extra layer of organisation ain't easy. Richard, what do you think about that? Does that make sense? It's
tricky because I know people like Amazon do that. If you're a Prime customer and you don't want to take the Prime option, they try and credit you back digitally. It's great if it works for both parties. So if you're trying to get all of your parcels delivered and actually you've got to hold some back, where do you hold those parcels? You know, in terms of your operation, have you got the space? Have you got the capacity? Does it actually make subsequent deliveries more complicated? But I do think when we talked about sustainability earlier, I do think there is something in that. I'm not quite sure how we do it yet, but grouping deliveries back so that you, for a Friday or when you're working from home or whatever, and you know you can take the delivery. So you could slow it down, perhaps to give you more certainty. I'm not sure how you'd credit the end customer if they've transacted with the retailer in the first place.
It's interesting. It's shaking the problem and seeing what falls out. It is. But as with everything, we talked about sustainability a lot, but actually it comes down to operational efficiency and about the amount of time and space you have to take up for that delivery. So if you can look at sustainability, and customers love that, we love that, then you can also, hopefully, be more focused, more targeted on what you're doing as a business. Is that not right?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we need to challenge this notion that everybody wants everything quickly, because it's hugely costly to deliver that. And I think customers are perhaps more easy to guide into efficient operations than we sometimes think. And certainly, you know, where we use variable pricing, we know the take-up of those fast delivery slots is low. So you can move customers into different services. We also see that where we offer book at point of sale and we give customer access to a full grid of delivery, that they will very often choose convenience and control over speed. So I know I'm going to be at home, particularly, you know, for a service like ours where you've got to be at home. I know I'm going to be at home next Thursday, but I'm not at home tomorrow. And so we've probably got more control than we think.
Yeah, it's wrong to lump everybody together. Yeah. Late breaking question from somebody at Hermes. Give us a second, let's see how this goes very quickly. Vida Zhu, Business Development at Hermes. Thank you very much for writing in. We noticed that the cross-border e-commerce parcels are more likely to have a poorer address quality than domestic parcels. How do you verify the addresses and reduce the undeliverable rate with the lowest costs? I know about rerouting, revising the address, but costs for this are quite high. So actually, again, we're back to the failure delivery, the failure problem. Quality of data. How important should I be looking at, how important that is for me to look at as a delivery firm now? Can I even verify properly?
Yeah. Quality of addressing is hugely important. You know, absolutely is the difference often between a successful delivery and a failed delivery. You know, there are tools that we can use to screen addresses that retailers can have on their websites, but I think it's absolutely right to pull out the point that those cross-border transactions are much more problematic than what we've developed, you know, here for within our own borders.
I'd throw it around, but we have to almost finish off. Finally, again, what should I do right now as a delivery company to start looking at my next steps, my innovations, my tech? How do I start to change my business model a little bit or adapt it to my consumer demands, which are changing very quickly?
I think be open for the technology. Have an open mindset to it. Share your pains with technology companies like Honeywell as well. We're more than happy to help you develop the right things to fix the issues where needed. Yeah.
And Richard, has innovation ever been more important?
I think it's a really critical time. I just think you look at the rate of change in the last 5 years, 10 years, last 1 year, last 6 months, phenomenal rate of change. So yeah, really good time to be in innovation.
Very good. Well, I'm afraid that's all that we have time for. I really hope that you've enjoyed the last hour, that you found the insights, the many insights from our panel insightful, that you feel a little bit better prepared to enter a new age of last mile delivery. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Thanks for sending in your questions, and sorry that we couldn't get to them all, but if you do have a couple of minutes before you leave us today, please do fill in the poll, the longer poll that should be appearing on the discussion feed right about now to give us your wider feedback. We really value your opinion, so let us know what you thought of today's discussion. Be kind, And if you enjoyed this conversation and you'd like to hear more, Leaders in Logistics has 4 events coming up in 2020. Make sure that you join us at our flagship event in Copenhagen this March, or across the pond as we launch our first ever event in the US. A link should be appearing below us right now with all of the information that you need. Get there. Thanks again for joining us today, and thanks to Honeywell for supporting our webinar today. We'll see you soon. Until then, all the best. Take care.